All right, this is Unit 1 of 1302, and this is Chapter 2. We're going to discuss growth of the industrial America. So, at this time, the Industrial Revolution is going to mark one of the most dramatic turning points in human history. During this era, you're going to see new sources of power. You're going to start to have factories and machines, faster methods of transportation, communication, like we talked about with Western expansion. This is all going to reshape the way people lived and worked. Now we're going to kind of look at the eastern part. Last lecture we talked about the western part of America and moving west. We're going to look at where they're coming from, which is the eastern part of the United States. So the Industrial Revolution is just going to transform all areas of society. It's going to connect distance markets. You're going to move from a rural society to an urban society. You're going to have different political movements that come out of this. You're going to have changing in working and living conditions. Cultural norms are going to shift as we start to create an urban world. If you hear snoring, that is the dog. That is not me. I keep trying to wake her up, but she keeps on just snoring, and I need to get these lectures done. So sorry. But if you hear snoring, it is the dog. Okay, so it's this whole technological revolution, okay? And through creating an industrial world, you have um, working classes, class structure that's going to come out of this. You're going to have different working hours. It's going to just change the entire face of how work in America looked because we were rural and then we go urban. All right, so as the U.S. is enjoying this large free trade market in the world, just fantastic economic growth. Goods are being moved from east to west. You have this mass production. You have capital investments are going to pour into railroads, steel mills. You're going to have emerging technologies and all the advancements that come with this emerging technologies. You're going to have the Bessemer steel process. You're going to have electricity, telephone. It's just going to revolutionize daily life and business. And this period is between 1865 and 1914 in the United States. Your main cities are going to be Chicago, Pittsburgh, New York. Those are going to become the symbols of global leadership, the masters of industry, and, the economic sectors. All right. Okay, so this slide discusses different inventors of the age. You have 1860, which is Singer, and he's going to do the sewing machine. 1876 is Bell, he's the telephone. But what you're usually tested on is 1879, Edison and the light bulb, and Edison's work and his research and his creation of electricity and how that changes things. You also have Westinghouse and Tesla. They create an alternative current to what Edison had. So at this time, electricity is essential to these modern industries. And they start to have a current war. Okay, so the United States has to decide who they should go with. Should the nation rely on the direct current, DC, or adopt this alternating current known as AC, which becomes the standard for the power distribution? So Edison refines the DC system and he's dominating. And it works well for short distance for electricity for lighting systems in a short distance, but it also has these major limitations. It can't travel far without losing power. So it made expanding impractical for large cities, and there wasn't long distance transmission. But Edison really gets all of the credit for electricity as far as star testing. So Westinghouse, he comes along with Tesla, and they introduce this competing system to Edison's, and it's a high voltage alternative, and it's AC, which can transmit over long distance with far less energy loss. So they create this AC motor. It's more efficient. It converts electrical energy into mechanical power. And AC, that form then becomes more suitable. It becomes the main thing for city lighting factories, and shows that for industrialization, the AC system is the way they need to go. The rise of the AC, of course, is going to affect Edison, and they're going to have their little war, and they're going to have their little smear campaign. But it's going to end up that the US is going to become AC standard, and you're going to have Westinghouse and Tesla are going to win that. All right, this is important. This is as these factories, electricity is going to have the light bulb. It's going to keep the lights on longer for the factories. It's going to be more work. As you see in the picture, you have all of the common working class factory people holding up the fat, money hogging, rich bosses. Okay, so you have four major ones that are going to become very wealthy off the backs of the working class. And this is often called the Gilded Age that we're looking into. Gilded being that it looks all shiny and pretty on the outside, but on the inside at its core, it's really rotten and disgusting. All right, so you have a term called robber baron. This is not a nice term. This is not a compliment. It is basically saying that the wealthy are exploiting the workers, they break laws, they engage in shady business practices to eliminate competition, and they're really getting their wealth off of the backs of the workers. And there's a growing gap between the wealthy and the working class, which are your workers. So it's more of a criticism. Well, it is a criticism. All right. So your main ones are Carnegie, Rockefeller, Vanderbilt, and Morgan, and they all get their money different ways. So Carnegie is going to get his money. He's a Scottish immigrant. He comes from poverty. He's going to get his money with American Steel. Okay, and he's going to create the gospel of wealth, and he is going to be creating the steel industry and the Bessemer process. Okay, you have, who's next? Rockefeller. Rockefeller is oil. So he's going to create a monopoly on oil, the oil industry. You have Vanderbilt is going to be your railroads, and Morgan is going to be an investor. So he's going to make his money by buying different industries. Okay, so the flip side, the people who do not think that they were robbers or barons, stealing and shady businesses, and believe that they were legit, they just used different practices to make their money. They're going to refer to the same four men as giants of wealth. Okay, so let's see what we need out of this. You still have the four. You know what they make. You have Carnegie is steel, Rockefeller is oil, Vanderbilt is railroads, and J.P. Morgan which he still has his bank um, and financing. He is just think of him as the bank money. Okay, this is just a real quick individual. Carnegie, he often is referred to as rags to riches. Again, he was poverty. He grew up poor. He is going to use vertical and horizontal integration. He is going to be seen as a person who gives back to the community. He will come up with what's called the gospel of wealth, which is how the wealthy should give back to the less advantaged. He is going to use vertical integration, which means that he controls every step from the raw material to transportation to manufacturing. So he controls it all of his businesses. Okay, so he doesn't have to pay anybody to do any of his stuff. And then you have horizon integration, which means that he has no competitors. He owns all of the steel industries. So there's nobody going against him. Okay, so he will eventually sell his steel corporation to JP Morgan, and that's how JP Morgan will make his money. Rockefeller is Standard Oil. Okay, he's going to control the oil. He he is going to be related to monopolies. He's going to also become the first modern trust. So he is going to be the one that starts creating monopolies and starts creating trust. So he's going to own all of the steps, vertical integration, horizontal integration. He's going to own everything. He is going to be the one that they're going to later come in with reforms to break up these monopolies and break up these trusts. So at this time, 1879, his company, Standard Oil, he controls 90% of the nation's ability for refining oil. So he is going to be what your monopolies and your anti-monopoly reforms and antitrust, they're going to be against Rockefeller. Okay, so this wants to go into a little bit more about what a trust is. So it allows one corporation to own stock in another corporation. So instead of direct ownership, stockholders in smaller companies transfer their shares to the central board, which is under Standard Oil, which is led by Rockefeller. So he controls everything. So these arrangements allow Standard Oil to control all of these other companies without technically violating any state laws. So this is so Rockefeller basically is using these holding structures to dominate all of the petroleum, all of the oil market. It's a monopoly, and it happens when one company sells products or services and everyone has to buy from them because no other companies exist. All right, so that's a monopoly. They own the price, they control the supply, they push all the smaller businesses out of control. So that's a monopoly, and the difference is a trust is the way of organizing the companies. So you have several companies in the same industry. They hand over all their control to a larger company, a larger board, a larger trustees. So the companies still exist, but the larger corporation makes all the decisions. They still control the smaller one. It's a way, the trust is a way to get around state laws. Okay, so let's see. You're going to have the monopolies, you're going to have the counter, which is going to be the Sherman Antitrust Act. And it's designed to get rid of these trusts, to make monopolies illegal, and to encourage competition in the field with smaller businesses. And it's going to be the government regulating it. So, going back to real quickly the Sherman Act, um, it became law that it couldn't exist, but you didn't have the courts were not enforcing it. All right, so a little bit about horizontal versus vertical control is vertical means that you own every bit of the process of the marketing from the raw material to what you produce, and horizontal is you own all of the companies that produce or do whatever. All right, Vanderbilt, he is going to be controlling the rail lines, which is spelled incorrectly. And he is going to standardize all of the rail rates and operations. So he is railroads. He's actually not tested too much on Star. Morgan, remember Morgan as the bank. He makes his money by stocks, by investments. He's going to eventually buy Carnegie's steel production. But he is going to make his money from buying and investing in different organizations. All right, railroads. This is railroad from 1970 to 1890. Those are all the different connections that you see. This is Vanderbilt, and it's discussing the empire he has on the rails. Okay, so let's hit on some things with the railroads. You are tested very heavily in STAR on the railroads. So you have the rise of the economy. Of course, we need to have a way to transport, to expand um, markets. So the railroads are going to be huge in this national economic system. They're going to link all of, like the distant regions that we've talked about, the distance markets, and everything's going to become a railroad driven society. They're just going to stimulate the growth of all these different steel, coal, timber, cattle, all these different industries are going to be stimulated by the railroads. All right, so we know it helped shape modern business. 1865 to 1916, the U.S. is laying more than 200,000 miles of track, okay, connecting all these different regions. The growth is going to have problems, though. It's going to take federal railroad grants to allow these railroad giants to come in and lay the track. You're going to have shipping rates are going to remain high. This is going to upset the farmers who can't afford to ship their stuff. This is going to support and kind of be a push factor with the Granger movement becoming a political movement because they need reform. The railroads are giant. These people hold, these, wealthy people hold um, all of the control. So you're going to have the Interstate Commerce Act of 1877. This is the federal government coming in to try and regulate the railroad industry. You're going to have the Panic of 1893. It's going to hit the railroad industry especially hard, and it's going to push a lot of companies into bankruptcy. It's going to lead to this massive corporate consolidation by these very powerful men like Vanderbilt and Morgan. They're going to step in, they're going to reorganize, they're going to stabilize the railroads, but then again, they're going to make a tremendous amount of money. They're going to influence how the railroads, they're going to just reshape that whole industry. Okay, this is social Darwinism and the gospel of wealth. These are justifications for what they do. Okay, so social Darwinism, this is going to come off of Darwin's idea, his theory, Charles Darwin's theory of natural selection, of how you either adapt or you get taken over. Darwin's theory of adaptation, it is based on plants and animals. It's not based on people and society. But what you have is social Darwinism. So you're going to have people like Herbert Spencer, who's going to come in and put social society in front of Darwinism. And they're going to argue that there is inequalities in humans, and that the result of a competitive struggle for survival of the fittest in individuals, that the fittest individuals in society will rise to the top. And those will be the wealthy, the successful, and that's their sign of superiority over the poor people. And it's evidence of weakness and failure in the poor and the wealthy, and the ones who should rise to the top are the fittest of society. So they've used Darwin's biological principles that were adaptation of plants and animals, and they have applied it to society. And this becomes the justification for imperialism and the justification for taking over different societies. Um, so social Darwinism will be used, you'll see that all the way in through imperialism, um, white man's burden, and all different things will be used to justify the takeover of other societies. All right, the gospel of wealth. This is going to be from Carnegie, and he's going to argue that it is the moral obligation of the wealthy to give to the lesser. So the rich are rich because they're this better class of people, but it is their responsibility to give back to those who are less fortunate through creating colleges, museums, libraries, and other institutions to improve the lives of the ordinary people. Um, this gospel of wealth is seen as these industrial leaders are the guardians of national wealth. They have been blessed with this wealth because they're the ones who can guard it, who can make the best decisions for the public good, but it is their responsibility to give back to the less than. So it's like Herbert Spencer's theory of social Darwinism, this idea that there are these individuals who are just better than others, and they're gifted and they're given these things. So the two just are justifications of why some people should be rich and at the top and why others should not.